As the daughter of a great scholar, I was forced to marry a lowly convict laborer by my father's decree. After accompanying him through the chaos of war to establish his power and dominate Central Plains, I discovered he had a childhood sweetheart he cherished. In the end, I met a tragic fate. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the very day my father ordered me to marry him. Looking at him, still destitute and broken, I said calmly, "I will not marry a lowly man like you, who once fought dogs for food." Main text. The night Pei Xiao's childhood sweetheart burned herself to death, I knew my own death was certain. Flames raged through the Western Palace. His young, lifelong companion vanished in the fire, refusing even to let him see her final moments. Yet everyone could hear her wails and laughter, merely her spirit's accusation. My beloved betrayed me. That harlot killed me. Pei Xiao raced back through the night upon hearing the news, only to witness the flames engulfing her in that final instant. His heart shattered, blood spilling from his mouth. He condemned the Western Palace. Every servant and attendant was buried with her. But that was not enough. The person Pei Xiao most wanted to kill was me. He had heard his beloved repeat her dying words. It was this thief of a woman who had killed her. Had I not taken her place as the principal wife, forcing her to live as a secondary consort? Had I not been unable to bear children, prompting ministers worried about the royal lineage to propose adopting her child as mine, she would never have been driven to despair and burned herself to death. Silence hung heavy in the hall as every servant in my palace trembled. My personal attendant begged me to flee the palace with her, to escape the wrath of Pei Xiao and avoid a tragic death. I was his legitimate wife, who had stood by him in his quest for power. Yet the entire palace knew that the woman who had just died in the Western Palace was his true love, even with the support of the ministers and the backing of my maternal clan. No one could protect me. Everyone knew Pei Xiao would kill me. My expression remained unchanged as I continued writing a letter to the eldest princess, begging her to take charge of the affairs of the poor women and children in the Central Plains after my death. Only after entrusting every matter to her did I put down my brush. Only then did I notice my hands trembling uncontrollably. It seemed, after all, that I still knew fear. The candle crackled. The sound of iron scraping across the floor echoed. I looked up abruptly. Pei Xiao had entered, his sword cleaving the table before me in two. He flung the bloodied blade aside, clamped his hand around my throat, his eyes dark and bloodshot. He spoke, each word deliberate. "What have you done to her?" I had lived my entire life as a virtuous wife. Yet in this moment, staring directly at my husband, I offered only a mocking smile. My cousin was right all along. Pei Xiao, a lowly wretch like you, how could you ever be worthy of marrying the legitimate daughter of the Yang family of Huayin? His eyes bulged with fury. Pei Xiao now dominated Central Plains, his fame echoing across rivers and mountains. Even the most savage Rongi tribesmen revered him as general. Yet before I married him, he was merely the most wretched of laborers. In his darkest days, he fought dogs for scraps. I, born into the great Yang clan, my father a renowned Confucian scholar whose fame echoed across the land. From the age of 10, my beauty and intellect were celebrated far and wide. All assumed my future husband would be a dragon among men, a noble of the highest rank. Who could have imagined that at my 16th birthday banquet, Pei Xiao, a lowly laborer delivering charcoal, caught the eye of my father, a master of physiognomy, though his rags were filthier than a beggar's, his hair matted and unkempt, and though he was emaciated and blue with cold, my father declared his eyes were deep and piercing, his bearing that of a dragon, and Phoenix the face of a future emperor. He betrothed me to him on the spot. Thus, I became his fiancée. I moved into his leaky, drafty thatched cottage. I shed my brocaded robes and began raising chickens and ducks, managing his household chores. Hands accustomed only to music, chess, calligraphy, and painting soon cracked and bled from washing clothes. My mother had passed away early, and my father's reputation as a great scholar was widely known. No one dared question the absurdity of his decision to my face. Only my cousin, far away in Jiangdong, wrote 10 letters protesting on my behalf. Later, Pei Xiao leveraged the Yang family's influence to raise an army and rise swiftly to power. Unconquered in battle, he dominated the region. Everyone praised my father, Lord Yang, for his discerning eye, even when Pei Xiao took my childhood sweetheart as his concubine, showering her with favor to the point of neglecting his lawful wife. They merely said, "Among princes and generals, who does not have 3 wives and 6 concubines?" They urged me to endure. I was disciplined my entire life. In youth, I was the dutiful daughter who learned needlework in virtue. Later, I spent my life as Pei Xiao's virtuous wife. I often wonder, had I not married Pei Xiao, what kind of life would I have lived? Yet, it was never to be. This life of mine besides the reputation of virtue has yielded nothing. Not even death is mine to choose. Pei Xiao's childhood sweetheart had burned herself to death. He came to kill me in his rage, unaware that before his arrival, the Yang family, fearing his wrath might fall upon them, had already sent their palace agent to force me to swallow poison. He clamped his hands around my throat, yet blood gushed from my mouth and nose, staining his hands. The Yangs believed witnessing my death would bring him satisfaction. Yet Pei Xiao's hands trembled. Panic and bewilderment replaced his fury as he cried out my name. I had already turned my head away. My loathing ran so deep that I refused to see his face one last time. With a "I'll" on my lips, I drew my final breath. I hadn't felt such relief in a very long time. No longer must I endure Pei Xiao's petty jealousies. No longer must I be driven by the Yang family. No longer must I be shackled by the burdens of a virtuous woman's reputation. Before I died, I did only 2 things. One was to write a letter to the eldest princess, pleading with her to care for the women and children of the Central Plains in my stead. The other was to utter words of scorn toward my husband, who had become a prince. I called him a lowly man. Pei Xiao was never worthy of my hand in marriage. When I opened my eyes again, I hadn't journeyed to the underworld. Instead, I found myself back at my 16th birthday banquet. The biting winter wind blew, but it was blocked by the brocaded screen before me. Hearing my father's booming laughter and the guests' chattering voices, I knew exactly when I had returned. The moment father publicly betrothed me to Pei Xiao. Women behind the screen stifled giggles, while my maidservant watched me with a mix of humiliation and worry. Though absurd in my past life, I hadn't argued then. I silently watched Pei Xiao's shadow cast upon the screen. A chill ran through me, followed by a sharp cry. "I will not marry." The room fell silent. The screen was moved aside. Seated behind it, my face pale, I truly saw Pei Xiao for the first time that day. He was still young, yet frail and thin, clad in coarse garments with disheveled hair. His body bore the scars of hard labor. His lips were chapped and purple from the wind. His gaze was like that of a lone wolf, fierce and pitiful, though unspoken. Everyone inwardly mocked his lowly, shabby appearance. I had always been proper and well-behaved, known for my kindness and compassion. That sudden, uncontrolled outburst of refusal made everyone laugh. It thrust him into an awkward position. I watched coldly from the sidelines. I repeated my words, each one cutting like a dagger. "I will never marry someone like you, a lowly creature who once fought dogs for scraps." The hall erupted in laughter. My father, the great scholar, spoke in shock and anger, trying to stop my outrageously harsh words. But it was too late. Amid the clamor, Pei Xiao stood below the steps. Hearing my words clearly, some jeered and laughed, tossing half-eaten steamed buns at his feet in a mocking gesture of feeding dogs. Surrounded by people in rich brocade robes, only Pei Xiao was treated like a lowly outcast. Snow settling on his shoulders as he stood in utter disarray. He looked up at me. His gaze was silent and furious. So restrained, so heartbroken. He was not yet the Pei Xiao who would become emperor and king. He was merely a boy. Poor enough. Yet he endured the most humiliating day of his life. I met his gaze, without a shred of remorse, and smiled faintly. Pei Xiao, I wanted you to remember this day, because in my past life, at my comingafage banquet, and for many years afterward, I too had known such humiliation and sorrow. Outside the window, 3 plum branches bloomed, yet because of my open defiance of my father and my harsh, unbecoming words at the banquet, I was confined to my room, copying admonitions until my hands trembled. Unable to stop, the congratulatory voices from the main hall drifted steadily to my side. These past days, visitors have streamed endlessly to the young residence. For 3 days ago, my father, Magistrate Yang, proclaimed throughout the county that his eldest daughter, Yang Shusu, would be wed to a mere convict laborer. Even though I do not love Pei Xiao, even though I publicly declared that day I would not marry Pei Xiao, my father remains as he was in my past life, insisting on marrying me to Pei Xiao. Marriage matters have always been decided by parents. My protests were futile. The many visitors who came were all there to see what this youth, whom Lord Yang called dragon-like in bearing and phoenix-like in grace, actually looked like, whether he was worth their investment. Not a single one came to speak for me, but a woman, if she must marry. Marrying a future nobleman would be no bad deal at all. I had anticipated this outcome and felt no surprise. Pausing my copying of the admonitions, I watched the snow drifting outside the window. The tutor sent by my father continued to persuade me. Young lady, though young Master Pei is now in disgrace, you know of Lord Yang's erudition. Who under heaven does not hail him as a great scholar? If you marry young Master Pei, he will one day surpass even nobles born into wealth. Even that renowned Prince Su of Jiangdong might, given time, learn to avoid his brilliance. Then you would be young Master Pei's wife through hardship and triumph. Would that not forge a deeper bond than becoming a ready-made mistress? Would it not become a tale for the ages? In my past life, it was through such daily persuasion that I gradually fell silent. I gradually accepted my fate and embraced Pei Xiao. My gaze shifted from the snow swirling outside the window to the tutor's incessantly chattering mouth. I offered only a faint smile. What sort of noble son is he? My gaze was cold. Yet the tutor suddenly shivered, a chill spreading through him for reasons unknown. In my past life, I was just coming of age then, so helpless and terrified. They wouldn't tell me that after marrying Pei Xiao, I'd have to raise chickens and chop wood. My hands covered in calluses. They wouldn't tell me how many years I'd suffer before Pei Xiao achieved glory. They wouldn't tell me that those destined for nobility possess cold hearts, that even a wife who stood by through hardship could be ordered to death in an instant. Closing my eyes, I told the tutor, tell Father I'll marry Pei Xiao only if he agrees to 3 conditions. In my past life, bound by my father's command, I married Pei Xiao. I had no choice but to be a dutiful wife. Yet I met that fate. This time, I start anew. But I am no longer the young Shisu who once placed father and husband above all else. I will not marry Pei Xiao. I will not be held hostage by the Yang family's debt of raising me. I want to live for myself once. Let Pei Xiao and the Yang family repay every debt they owe me. That is all. In the depths of winter, my father summoned Pei Xiao to see me. Amidst the courtyard grove, snow fell like cotton fluff. I made Pei Xiao wait 3 hours before finally arriving. He still stood below the steps, not daring to step into the pavilion to shelter from the snow. His shoulders heavy with fallen snow, servants cleared a path for me, laying fine felt and hanging windproof curtains in the drafty pavilion. Only after the brazier warmed the air did I step inside. It had truly been a long time since I last looked down upon Pei Xiao like this. When I first married him, we were a couple through hardship, supporting each other as equals. Later, when he was enfeoffed as a marquis and became a prince, I constantly had to bow and kneel before him. I dreaded looking up and seeing the anger in his eyes. I had almost forgotten that, in the beginning, Pei Xiao had to look up to me. I stroked the silver-thread hand warmer, watching Pei Xiao endure the cold, examining his youthful features closely. I noticed even the nails on his hands and sleeves were cracked and peeling from toil. No wonder he endured my public humiliation at the comingafage banquet and accepted this marriage. Had it not been for the Yang family's proposal, who knows how many years it would have taken him to escape such lowly status. I smiled faintly. Pei Xiao, do you know why I relented and agreed to marry you? He paused silently, then shook his head. Though you are lowly, you possess a fine face. I'll assume you're desperate to survive and wish to marry into the Yang family. But I still demand you meet 3 conditions. First, born into wealth. I cannot endure hardship. You must bring 300 taels of gold to woo me. Second, I hear you have a childhood sweetheart. Should you rise in fortune, would you take another wife? I studied Pei Xiao's expression. He had long been numbed by the deep snow, his eyes dark as ink, yet his once straight spine gradually bent. Pei Xiao's voice was low and hoarse. 300 taels of gold. No concubinesto marry a daughter of the Yang family would be Pei Xiao's greatest fortune. The snow intensified, falling like a curtain, a veil stretching between him and me. I nodded softly. Pei Xiao pressed on. And the third demand? The third demand is this. On the day of the winter solstice, you must pick for me a branch of crimson plum blossoms from the snow-capped peaks of the western mountains. Pei Xiao had braced himself for unreasonable demands. Yet he never imagined such a simple, girlish request. His eyelashes fluttered slowly, melting the snow that had settled upon them like droplets of warm tears. When he lifted his gaze, he froze. The noble lady who had looked down upon him from their first meeting now wore a rare, serene smile. In a daze, he felt as though he had seen this gentle smile countless times before. For some inexplicable reason, an unbearable ache and bitterness welled up within him. It felt as if a vast gash had been torn open in his heart. He could only feel the swirling snow pouring into that gaping wound, leaving nothing but bone-deep agony. He heard his own voice, bitter and strained, uttering only one word. Fine. In turbulent times, ordinary people struggled merely to make ends meet, let alone earn 300 taels of gold. When his father heard of this, he offered little opposition. Firstly, he wanted to see how Pei Xiao could possibly earn 300 taels. Secondly, even if Pei Xiao failed, he would cover the cost himself. Only my wet nurse, who had been caring for me since childhood and had experienced marriage herself, voiced her concern. Young miss, treating him this way before marriage, if he ever truly becomes successful, he will surely hold this against you and treat you harshly. My hands sketching on the table didn't pause. Hearing this, I merely smiled faintly. She didn't know Pei Xiao's character. No matter how well I treated him, he wouldn't remember. In my past life, I married Pei Xiao and spared no effort. I never leveraged my status to make things difficult for him. Once married, I truly devoted myself to building a life with him, giving him the entirety of my youth. At first, I managed the household affairs for him. Later, I won over the wives and daughters of his mighty generals and their clans, all under my care. When he first raised his army, short on soldiers and provisions, it was my dowry I gave, pouring every last coin into his war chest. Year after year passed before I saw his true face and character. He was unworthy of my wholehearted devotion, unworthy of my marriage. Demanding 300 gold pieces from him was merely to witness his humiliation over such a paltry sum, a small solace for my wounded heart. I tapped into the connections my mother left behind, spreading word that anyone assisting Pei Xiao would face not only no favors but deliberate obstruction at every turn. Forget 300 gold pieces. He couldn't earn a single copper coin, struggling even to feed and clothe himself. Earlier, I had people sabotage his thatched hut, coupled with a night of relentless snow. The hut collapsed. He was finally left homeless and without options. He signed a life-or-death contract with the underground arena 80 li outside Huayin County. He fought ferocious beasts to entertain the nobility, because of his recent reputation for being favored by Lord Yang. The arena's manager specially increased his pay, 1 gold piece for each victory. If he died in the arena, he would bear the consequences himself. On the day he entered the arena, I personally went to the scene, my face concealed by a hood. ascending to the second-floor VIP seats. I surveyed the entire arena from above. Today, Pei Xiao battled a white-striped tiger starved for 3 days. His sleeves and flesh were torn by the beast's claws. Like a trapped animal, he dashed wildly across the arena, crashing to the ground in utter disarray as blood dripped from his wounds. I watched calmly from above. Pei Xiao's desperate struggle now mirrored countless scenes I had witnessed in his harem during my past life. By then, I had already seen his true colors and grown weary of his face. Pei Xiao favored Qingmei, who had also borne him his first child. Hearts throughout the court and even the harem began to waver, shifting allegiance toward the Western Palace. I was terrified. I feared Pei Xiao would name her child heir apparent, that court ministers would advise deposing me and installing the Western Palace as empress, that Pei Xiao might one day seek retribution against the Yang family and make me the scapegoat, sentencing me to death. I exhausted myself with worry, night after sleepless night, dreading that in some nightmare, Pei Xiao would assassinate me to clear the way for the Western Palace. Within the palace, I cultivated alliances with court officials, accepted new women sent by the Yang family to bolster my favor, and fought desperately to preserve my position. That winter, when I caught sight of myself in the mirror, I suddenly found my own face unfamiliar, grotesque, and terrifying. 300 taels of gold. To make Pei Xiao endure 300 such battles as a trapped beast no more than his due. Pei Xiao lay on the ground, blood soaked into his clothes. The starving tiger approached him, but in that single moment of lowered guard, he was stabbed through the throat and died. I let out a hollow laugh, rising to leave, but then, from the private room next door, a voice remarked, "The Yang family's daughter has always been known for her kindness and virtue. Who would have thought she could be so ruthless toward her future husband, demanding he earn 300 gold pieces before she'll marry him, driving him to the brink of death. If not for his quick wit just now, he'd be dead already. As for marriage, a matter decided by parental decree and matchmaker's words, what does a mere woman know?" The crowd murmured in agreement. I lowered my eyes slightly. Then, from the other side, a cold snort echoed. The speaker's voice was crisp and cool, like the clinking of jade against stone. With weary indifference, they remarked, 300 gold pieces to marry Yang Shousu, whose maternal family once produced an empress. Who truly benefits from this bargain? Who was wronged? In my view, only a peerless dragon among men like the Su Crown Prince of Jiangdong could barely be considered a match for her. The crowd fell silent, glancing back toward the elegant booth where the voice had come from. They instantly quieted, though it was merely a resting place. The exterior had been adorned with inch-by-inch gold thread brocade from Jiangnan. Beautiful maids and imposing servants stood guard, swords in hand. The occupant inside must be of extraordinary status. I turned abruptly at the sound. I never expected to see Prince Su here. In my past life, Pei Xiao had always gnashed his teeth in hatred toward this arch-rival. Though Pei Xiao had long dominated the Central Plains and sought to extend his blade toward Jiangnan, Prince Su repeatedly blocked his advance, using the natural barrier of the Yangtze River as his defense. By the time I died, Pei Xiao had never realized his ambition to march south. Yet, he had once saved my life. Pei Xiao took the gold from the steward and staggered toward the exit. But in the snowy wilderness, a gilded carriage with a canopy already stood waiting, its canopy adorned with the golden tassels of the Yang family of Huayin. He halted abruptly, instinctively glancing down at his appearance, covered in grime. The last time he saw me, he had likely chosen his most presentable attire, appearing neat and handsome. Yet now, he was as lowly and wretched as when we first met. For a moment, he felt utterly ashamed. I did not step down from the carriage. Instead, I had my maid deliver a mask and a message. It was simply, "Next time you wrestle beasts for the crowd's amusement, do not forget to wear this mask. I find it disgraceful." The howling wind whipped my curtain aside. Pei Xiao stood amidst the white haze, his body covered in wounds. Blood dripped from him, staining the air crimson. In his tightly clenched fist lay nothing more than a fragment of gold, stained with blood. His hand turned white as he gripped the mask. Finally unable to suppress his humiliation, he turned to look back at me. My expression remained calm as I gazed at him. Not a flicker of emotion or remorse. Pei Xiao rasped, his entire being a snowy expanse. Yang Shusu, I know you despise my lowly status, deeming me unworthy of you. But who can choose their birth? Given time, I might surpass those pampered sons of privilege who rely on their fathers' and ancestors' fortunes. One day, I may achieve something truly extraordinary. To judge a man solely by his origins and circumstances that not profoundly unfair. Must I first be enfeoffed as a marquis or crowned a king? Possess bronze cauldrons and bronze tripods in 10,000 households? Before you would deign to see me as a living, breathing person, is that not so? The wind gradually subsided, and in the instant the curtain fell, I suddenly lifted my gaze, and Pei Xiao heard my answer. No, that is not so. Pei Xiao was mistaken. My husband need not be a marquis or a king. Nor must he possess 1,000 households. Differences in family lineage, distinctions of birth, these are not within human control. Given the chance, who wouldn't wish to be born into a noble house, spared the daily toil of making ends meet? My contempt for Pei Xiao stems not from his humble origins, but from his inherently vile nature. I only hoped my husband would treat me as kindly as I treated him. I only hoped he would walk hand in hand with me through this difficult world. Yet in my past life, I began as Pei Xiao's ladder to the clouds, only to become a pawn he could discard at will. He spent his entire life betraying me. The carriage had been moving for some time when I heard Pei Xiao behind me, his voice hoarse and strained as he shouted through gritted teeth. Then why, of all people, did you single me out for such cruelty? I closed my eyes and gave no answer, for I would not only treat him cruelly, I would send him to his death. Heavy snow had fallen continuously in Huayin County, turning into a disaster that froze countless livestock to death. The county magistrate had summoned my father 3 times to observe the celestial signs and predict when the snow would cease. But even he could not discern it. Yet I declared the heavy snow would stop the very next day. The learned elders present all laughed at me, and even my father, Master Yang, smiled, telling me, a woman confined to the inner chambers, not to speak recklessly. Yet the next day, the snow truly cleared. In the following days, every single one of my subsequent weather predictions proved accurate. Not only that, I took half of my dowry to aid the disaster relief, distributing free porridge daily in the county seat. Passing by the brick kiln, I casually taught the brickmakers how to save half their labor and materials while firing better bricks. I spent 3 hours at the private school, which had always looked down on women. Even the strictest old scholar personally escorted me out and announced on the spot that next year, eligible girls would be permitted to enroll. Rumors gradually spread throughout the county. Master Yang's reputation for erudition might be undeserved, for his eldest daughter seemed to surpass him in learning. The whispers began questioning my father's judgment. Could a worthless convict truly possess the extremely auspicious features he claimed? Was he truly worthy of the Yang family's daughter? So exceptionally talented. As I ladled out the soup, I thought of my father's dark, incredulous gaze and couldn't help but smile. It clearly said, you're just a mere woman of the inner chambers, how could you know any of this? In my past life, I studied celestial phenomena under Pei Xiao's military strategist. In the palace, I managed household affairs and coordinated silver and grain supplies. I encountered the finest craftsmen, the most skilled embroiderers, and the best tutors. Learning much from them, my knowledge was no less than any man's in this world. Yet Pei Xiao would always pass by the stall where I served soup. For reasons unknown, he would often pause from afar, yet never approach to speak with me. Having served as a virtuous empress for several years in my past life, distributing soup was second nature to me. Those who came to receive it were all impoverished souls. Yet I never looked down on them as common nobles might. Instead, I smiled and reminded them to be careful of the heat. A frail girl of barely 8 years old accidentally spilled soup onto my robes. Her mother nearly fell to her knees in fright. But I merely shook my head and slipped the girl 2 extra steamed buns. Just as I was preparing to return and change my clothes, a silk cloth for wiping appeared beside me. I looked up to find Pei Xiao standing there. His face was pale, though his clothes were clean, yet an unmistakable scent of blood emanated from him, and I wondered how much flesh remained intact beneath his garments. These past days, he had been shuttling back and forth to the arena. 300 gold pieces were more than enough to torture him to death. Yet his brow and eyes grew ever more resolute, faintly echoing the later form of Pei Xiao from my past life. I hesitated, but he stubbornly offered the silk cloth. For him, a single silk cloth was no small expense. Only when my maid accepted it did he step back. He bowed deeply. "Miss Yang, let us annul this betrothal." I never expected such words. My surprise was fleeting. I knew Pei Xiao's nature, even with so many declaring him unworthy these past days. His thirst for glory and his desire to make the Yang family his ally meant he would never lightly abandon the chance to wed into the Yang clan. Yet Pei Xiao spoke slowly, as if lost in recollection. "I had a dream. In it, I already had a wife, and thus could not marry you. She too seemed to come from a distinguished family, yet she did not scorn my origins, sharing hardships with me. Were it not for her, I doubt I could achieve great things in the future. These past days, I've still been risking my life in the arena, earning gold, only to find her and spare her the hardships I endured in my dream. She is the finest woman in this world, and she is still waiting for me. I cannot betray her." People often interpret dreams as omens. Only I knew that Pei Xiao's dream wasn't about the future, it was about the past. I lowered my eyes, smiling without showing it. "Do you know her name?" Pei Xiao shook his head. He wouldn't say it. In the arena, whenever he neared death and lost consciousness, he always heard a woman softly calling him my husband. In the dream, they dwelled in a humble thatched cottage. Yet the woman carried the grace of a noble lady. Sometimes she awkwardly tended the charcoal fire, burning her hands. Yet when she touched brush and ink, her brilliance was astonishing. One day, she painted for hours. He pretended to pass by several times, but couldn't make sense of the painting. Feeling inferior, he angrily scolded her for wasting money. Yet she presented the painting to him, pointing to the inscription with a smile. "Behold the ancient pine, weathered by wind and frost in the ravine. Yet when the time comes, it stands tall to support the hall of light." Knowing his despair, she encouraged him in her own way. It was the first time he had ever received a painting or calligraphy as a gift. Illiterate and ignorant of art, he received a magnificent painting of a dragon in stormy winds at his lowest point. Yet every time Pei Xiao awoke from his dream, his heart ached unbearably. He couldn't recall the woman's face or name, only that she was kind. He had to survive. He had to find her, to make amends. I realized Pei Xiao was beginning to recall events from his past life. I must kill him quickly. Fortunately, the day after Pei Xiao informed me of the broken engagement was the 12th day of the 12th month. I agreed to help Pei Xiao search for the woman from his dreams, but insisted he fulfill the third promise he made that day: to pick a bouquet of snow-capped red plum blossoms from the western mountains for me. Though puzzled, he complied. The western mountains lay 180 li beyond the city walls. I watched him enter the mountains, yet he did not venture deep. Instead, he waited in a pavilion guarding the mountain pass, quietly awaiting visitors. It was not until dusk that a group of riders appeared, galloping toward the pavilion. The leader, clad in purple robes with a golden sash, radiated an air of nobility. He approached swiftly, only to halt abruptly when my guards blocked the path. Reining his horse to a halt, his attendants instantly went on high alert, drawing their swords and glaring toward the pavilion. Finding only me, a woman, and my attendant, they grew even more suspicious. "Who goes there?" they demanded harshly. Seated calmly in the pavilion, I showed no fear of their weapons. My gaze fixed on the figure in purple at the center. I called out his name directly. Prince Su. This path is impassable. Within the hour, Shishan will be struck by an avalanche. In my past life, the western mountains had avalanched on the 12th day of the 12th lunar month, burying 300 bandits beneath the snow. The people of Huayin had rejoiced at the news. Yet I had also heard that a nobleman had been caught in the disaster. All his loyal retainers had perished protecting him, while the nobleman himself had narrowly escaped. However, he had contracted a lifelong cold ailment from the ordeal, leading to his premature death. Seeing Prince Su in the arena then, I recalled the widely known story of his chronic ailment later. It wasn't hard to guess that the person in peril today was him. Prince Su lifted his gaze toward the western mountains. The snow-capped peaks appeared serene. Yet after a few moments of scrutiny, a trace of gravity settled upon his previously spirited face. When he turned to look at me, his eyes shone like stars and the moon. Without question, without inquiry, he said, "Thank you." I gave a slight nod, saying nothing more. Prince Su had done me a favor in my past life, saving my life on the battlefield, reborn into this life. I sought revenge where owed and repaid kindness where owed. Thus, I freed him from a lifetime of suffering from that cold ailment. I thought they were leaving. I lowered my head to warm my hands by the charcoal brazier in the pavilion, but suddenly heard Prince Su's cool, weary voice. "Young Shusu." Startled, I looked up. I hadn't expected him to know who I was. Amid the howling wind, Prince Su sat atop a towering steed, reins in hand, snow and wind brushing his temples. He said earnestly, 300 taels is too little. To marry you, 3,000 taels or even a city would not suffice. In my past life, in the 5th year after marrying Pei Xiao, he won his first battle and captured his first city. Yet his first imperial decree was to search for a woman Yuan Yang, his childhood playmate. A reward of 300 taels was offered to anyone providing clues. That night, while delivering medicine to Pei Xiao, I sought to ask who Yuan Yang was and why I had never mentioned her in 5 years. Instead, I overheard the military strategist advising Pei Xiao against such a public search for a woman, lest it offend the Yang family. Pei Xiao declared, "Yuan Yang has done me a favor. I must find her. I'll make arrangements with the Yang family." After all, a man having multiple wives is commonplace. The military strategist then asked, "And what of your wife?" Pei Xiao paused briefly before replying, "As for Yang Shusu, she need not concern me. Had I not been driven by ambition, I would never have married her." That night, I sat in the courtyard until dawn. When I looked up at the sky, I realized my face was wet with tears. Father had betrothed me to Pei Xiao to win his favor, condemning me to suffering. Pei Xiao already had a beloved, yet he married me anyway to secure the Yang family's support. They both treated me with the same contempt. They disregarded and trampled upon my fate. By dawn, I wiped away my tears, the thick calluses on my hands rubbing my eyelids raw. I thought, it doesn't matter. My childhood aspirations never lay within the confines of a harem. While Pei Xiao fought campaigns east and west, searching for Yuan Niu, I allied with the princess within his sphere of influence. Together, we established a women's academy, teaching impoverished women and children of the Central Plains the art of weaving. This allowed them to sustain themselves through their own labor. We enacted laws to punish those who drowned their newborn daughters. When Pei Xiao finally found Yuan Niu, he made her his consort Yuan, showering her with favor. I brought forth the medical texts our clan had secretly treasured, including the treatise on cold damage and miscellaneous diseases, and copied them for all to learn. Yet my fate remained as fragile as floating duckweed. Who knew when the current might snap me in two? Pei Xiao had made too many enemies. His adversaries captured me and sent word demanding that Pei Xiao, now the dominant power in the Central Plains, surrender 3 cities. He naturally refused, instead mocking his foes for their delusions. In this hour of peril, it was Prince Su of Jiangdong, passing by, who first halted my executioner with a single arrow. Then, alone, he entered the enemy camp and rescued me from the jaws of death. He personally escorted me back. That night, delirious with fever, I clung to the person beside me like a drowning man, calling out only cousin. Perhaps it was because I believed my cousin was the only one left in this world who still held a shred of genuine affection for me. Upon waking, I felt profoundly embarrassed. First, for my discourteous behavior in my sleep. Second, because the bond between my cousin and me was not as deep as I had imagined. My mother passed away early, severing all ties with my maternal family. In truth, no one in this world truly cared about me. Yet Prince Su said, "Your cousin cares deeply for you. He lies gravely wounded from battle and cannot come himself. Not only your cousin, but your maternal grandmother and all your maternal relatives pleaded with me to save you. Amidst this chaotic age of constant warfare, they repeatedly sent messengers and letters to Huayin. Yet time and again, circumstances or the Yang family and Pei Xiao blocked their path, leaving us without word. Even when the Yang family sought to betroth you to Pei Xiao, your maternal grandmother was the first to oppose it. Falling ill with grief, back then, they sent me to the Yang household to escort you back to Jiangdong, but I encountered unforeseen circumstances and ultimately failed to fulfill my promise. In the end, it was I who failed you." Prince Su spoke too much in one breath, aggravating his cold, turning his face. He coughed, but it was blood. Yet it was enough. That someone in this world still cared for Medhat was enough. Prince Su asked again, "Your maternal grandmother asked me to convey this to you. Do you wish to go to Jiangdong?" In the end, I did not go to Jiangdong. I could not go, for Pei Xiao was already attacking Jiangdong. He even nearly killed my cousin in his bid to seize Shuzhou. Everyone knows I am Pei Xiao's wife. I have no face to set foot in Jiangdong for the rest of my life. After a rebirth, I thought only of how to kill Pei Xiao. Ultimately, I devised the avalanche disaster in the western mountains. I made him enter the mountains that very day. Even witnessing the avalanche myself, I remained uneasy, having lived with Pei Xiao for so many years in my past life. I sometimes believed my father's claim that he was a man of destiny. Pei Xiao always managed to turn misfortune into fortune. Situations that seemed fatal to others would somehow, through some twist of fate, present him with a way out. I ordered a mountain search to begin on the third day after the avalanche. If Pei Xiao had somehow survived, he was to be killed. Yet the searchers found no trace of his body. My father, upon learning that Pei Xiao had vanished in the avalanche while picking flowers for me, was so overcome with grief he fainted on the spot, nearly coughing up blood. Before Pei Xiao formally came to call off the engagement, in the eyes of the Yang family elders and my father, I had caused the death of my betrothed. It was utterly unthinkable. While they dispatched men to search for Pei Xiao, they also deliberated on how to blame me. First, they punished me by making me kneel in the ancestral hall, copying admonitions as I had done countless times before. From clan regulations to female conduct, from moral precepts to feminine virtues. Yet within half a day, a steady stream of visitors arrived. The county scholar seeking my expertise in ancient texts, the magistrate summoning me to observe celestial phenomena, the renowned scholar who traveled afar upon hearing of my skill in smelting iron and firing bricks, the impoverished villagers who came seeking my charity one by one. They all came knocking. The clan, having no other choice, sent someone to unlock the ancestral hall. Yet I found myself unwilling to move. I remained kneeling, copying the admonitions. As the commotion around the Yang household grew ever louder, Father could no longer contain himself, and personally escorted me out with a grim face. He said in a deep voice, "Yang Shusu, you must not go too far. Marriage is a matter decided by parents. I have chosen a husband for you whose destiny is beyond compare, and you will share in that greatness." Not only did you refuse to listen, but you repeatedly defied me, even going so far as to kill the husband I chose for you. That was a human life. As a woman, You should be tending to your husband and raising children. Yet you parade yourself before others daily, lacking any feminine virtue. Now, instead of repenting, you conspire with outsiders to coerce the Yang family, who raised you in silk and fine food. Is this how you bring shame upon the Yang name? I heard these words countless times in my past life. My father didn't covet wealth, but he cherished his reputation above all. He admired Pei Xiao, using him to showcase his unparalleled talent for recognizing talent. Yet he traded away my entire life as if I were a piece of merchandise. Walking straight through the Yang's gloomy courtyard, the moment I stepped outside their gates, I felt the sky brighten and a weight lift from my shoulders. I turned to my father and said, "The debt of life and nurturing, I have long since repaid. I owe you nothing." Carriages lined the perimeter of the Yang residence, the area teeming with people. Yet, 2 sharp taps sounded against the carriage's shaft. All heads turned to look. Before the ornate carriage stood a retinue of servants and maids. Yet the master's posture was anything but refined. He sat cross-legged outside the carriage, an air of casual nobility radiating from him bearing only true royalty could possess. It was he who had been tapping the jade in his hand. Prince Su declared, "Lord Yang, here is an urgent letter from General Jiang of Jiangdong Shuzhou. He entrusted me to deliver it to you." Father still held great regard for this nephew-in-law. Remembering him as a promising young man, he immediately descended the steps, intending to receive it personally. General Jiang was my cousin. In my past life, he was the only one who expressed anger and dissatisfaction over my betrothal to Pei Xiao. Yet bound by duty, he couldn't come to Huayin. So he furiously wrote 10 letters in protest. As a military officer deeply rooted in the traditions of noble lineage, his letters were particularly harsh. Prince Su let out a soft sigh and tore open the wax seal on the letter. Only one sentence remained. A chill lingered at the corner of Prince Su's lips. He says, "Yang Gong, you senile fool, how dare you marry my precious cousin to a lowly convict? If you value him so highly, why not marry him yourself?" A momentary silence fell. Someone couldn't hold back a laugh. Then, bursts of laughter erupted. Master Yang, revered as a great scholar of the Central Plains for most of his life, was publicly mocked like this for the first time. His face flushed crimson, the world spinning before his eyes. His trembling hand pointed. "Who is this insolent brat? Seize him!" The young household's guards were about to move. The elegant maids and imposing servants before the luxurious carriage drew their swords half an inch from their scabbards in unison, bellowing, "Prince Su is present. Who dares move?" Prince Su Song of Jiangdong, eldest son of the Su king, was renowned as the most talented scholar under heaven. At 10 years old, he already earned the reputation of being a man who could single-handedly withstand 10,000 soldiers. At the mention of his name, no one dared move. Yet Su Song seemed oblivious to the commotion had caused. Casually pulling out another scroll, "Miss Yang's maternal family, the Jiang clan, has heard of this matter. They lament that the Yang family has sunk to such a state of confusion, treating their granddaughter with such contempt. They have specially entrusted me to escort Miss Yang back to Jiangdong, where she shall take her mother's surname and henceforth be known as a daughter of the Jiang family." Prince Su lifted his gaze to meet mine, a faint smile touching his lips. "But I wonder, Miss Yang, would you be willing to take the Jiang surname and live with your maternal family in Jiangdong?" The cold wind howled. Prince Su spoke with such casual ease, as if unaware of the storm his words would unleash. Clan lineage held immense importance. As long as I remained a daughter of the Yang family, no matter how much I resisted, he could marry me off to Pei Xiao to any man he wished to win over. As long as I bore the Yang name, whatever status I attained in the future, I would be bound to serve the Yang family. To refuse would mark me as disloyal, unrighteous, and unfilial, rootless, forgotten soul, despised by all. My entire life would be entangled in the Yang family's affairs. Even if I avoid marrying Pei Xiao this time, what about next time? Whom will father demand I wed? Only by severing ties with the Yang family would everything be resolved. Gazing into Su Song's eyes, I found myself momentarily lost, speechless. Yet in the biting wind, Prince Su rose to his feet, tall and graceful. His usual languid air vanished, his expression serene. Amidst the murmurs of disapproval, he only looked at me and asked with a smile, "Do you wish to go to Jiangdong?" Journeying to Jiangdong required much preparation beforehand. I watched as my name was personally struck from the ancestral registry in the family shrine. The Huayin Yang clan, a century-old noble house. Father questioned me repeatedly. Unable to believe I would truly leave the Yang family and change my surname to Jiang, I nodded in affirmation, because I wanted the right to choose for myself. Before leaving the Yang household, I had copies made of the family's most precious century-old library collection. These were sent to various academies and private schools, made available for scholars across the land to study. My father earned his reputation as a great Confucian scholar through genuine learning. For the Yang family's library monopolized knowledge inaccessible to most common readers. Now I had copied these books out into the world. Given time, a truly benevolent and virtuous great scholar would inevitably emerge. As I stepped out of the ancestral hall, I halted abruptly. Pei Xiao stood beneath the suspended sun, his eyes and brows etched with anguish. His clothes were splattered with blood. He must have escaped the avalanche somehow. His face was ashen, his lips trembling, symptoms of frostbite. I walked on as if I hadn't seen him. Already some distance away, when Pei Xiao called out behind me, "Yang Shusu, I never truly meant to kill you." I turned back. In the biting cold, Pei Xiao coughed up blood with every word. 10 years of marriage, I know you've been good to me, stood by me through hardship, fought alongside me for dominance in Central Plains. Part of me thought this was simply a wife's duty. Yet deep down, I always felt dissatisfied, resentful. Because of this resentment, I treated you harshly and neglected you. I found you on NV, claiming it was to repay a debt. But truly I sought a woman 100 times lower in status than you, so I could stand equal with her and feel satisfied. Only after your death did I realize what that resentment truly stemmed from, because I knew all along he was unworthy of you. Even if I became a marquis or a king, I would still be unworthy of you. He didn't want to say it. In his earliest dreams, the noble lady had been so gentle and warm. He vowed to find her, to make amends, and thus broke off his betrothal to the Yang family. But as the avalanche closed in on him, he remembered the noble lattice name from his dreams, Yang Shusu. He was stunned, utterly baffled. Not until later did he recall what happened after. He deserved it. Pei Xiao still looked like a youth, yet he trembled like an old man. But the past need not be dwelled upon further. The carriage bound for Jiangdong was already prepared. After climbing into the carriage, he heard Pei Xiao's final words. He said, "Yang Shusu, in the end, it is I who have wronged you. You should never have married me." But his voice was drowned out by the crowd from Huayin who had come to see him off. These days, everyone in Huayin had taken a liking to me, and they had come out to bid me farewell. The farewell gifts nearly filled an entire carriage. Fortunately, Prince Su's carriage was large and luxurious enough. He handed me a letter from my maternal grandmother in the Jiang family. In it, she urged him to visit Huayin and look after her granddaughter, asking if she would be willing to come to Jiangdong to live with her grandmother. In both past and present lives, Prince Su's arrival in Huayin was no coincidence. He came to fetch me. Yet in my past life, the avalanche disaster nearly cost him his life instead. I lifted the curtain. Outside, the snow-covered fields had melted, revealing fresh green shoots. This was a brand new beginning, one that had always belonged to me. The story ends here. Thank you all for your company. See you in the next chapter.